7 rules you must follow in the funeral home at midnight horror story. Part 1. The first rule is silence. The Everhull Mortuary sat at the edge of town, cloaked in a shroud of ivy and silence. Built in the 1800s, its brick exterior bore the wear of time, cracks like veins, windows smeared with the fingerprints of ages long past. I was a mortuary science student, and this was supposed to be a simple overnight internship. Log entries, maintain the embalming room, and watch the bodies. Nothing more. At 11:45 p.m., Mr. Harrow, the head mortician, handed me a folded slip of paper before leaving. His fingers trembled as he pressed it into my palm. "Don't read this until I'm gone," he whispered, eyes darting toward the viewing hall. "And follow it to the letter. Everhull changes after midnight." Then he left, locking the heavy doors behind him with a thunderous clack. I stood alone in the reception area. The overhead lights flickered, once, twice, then steadied into a dull amber glow. I opened the note. It was handwritten in frantic, slanted script. Rules for the midnight shift. Do not break them. Once the clock strikes midnight, you must remain absolutely silent for 10 minutes. Do not speak. Do not whisper. Do not even breathe too loudly. The dead are listening. I laughed nervously, thinking it was a twisted joke for rookies. But when the grandfather clock in the lobby began to chime, dong, dong, my heart dropped. Midnight. I stood still. The 9th chime echoed through the empty halls like a judge's gavel. The 10th was swallowed in silence. Suddenly, the temperature dropped. I could see my breath. The fluorescent lights above the embalming room flickered violently, casting long shadows that twisted and twitched like living things. Somewhere deep inside the mortuary, a drawer creaked open. I didn't move. I didn't make a sound. Then I heard it. Soft, wet footsteps. Slap, shuffle, slap, shuffle, coming from the hallway where the bodies were stored. Not hurried, not afraid, purposeful, slow. They grew louder, closer. They stopped just outside the reception door. I clenched my fists and held my breath, jaw trembling. On the other side of the door, I could hear breathing. Not mine, not human, guttural, rattling, like lungs full of fluid. I didn't speak. I didn't move. 10 minutes crawled by like 10 years. Then, just as suddenly, the presence was gone. No footsteps, no breath. The light steadied. I exhaled. The paper in my hand was damp with sweat. 1 rule down, 6 more to go. But something told me the next one would be harder. Part 2. The body in viewing room B is not yours to clean. By 12:13 a.m., the silence that had nearly choked me finally lifted. I moved carefully, legs weak, trying to convince myself the things I heard were tricks of a sleep-deprived mind. But deep down, I knew something had shifted in the mortuary. It felt awake. I returned to the note. Below Rule 1, in darker ink, as if added later, was Rule 2. 2. Do not enter viewing room B after midnight. If you hear movement inside, ignore it. Do not attempt to clean the body inside. It is not meant for you. I stared at the line, heart sinking. There was only one body scheduled for the viewing rooms tonight, and it was supposed to be in room A. Viewing room B hadn't been used in years, not since the gas leak incident. Everyone said it was off limits. but at exactly 12:16 a.m., I heard it, a thud. Then, the slow dragging of something heavy. Slide, tap. Slide, tap. It was coming from behind the frosted glass of viewing room B. I froze at the reception desk. My mind screamed, ignore it. But my instincts told me to look. Curiosity clawed at me, irrational and hungry. The lights in the hallway buzzed louder than usual. As I crept toward the door, I noticed the hallway growing colder again, colder than before. My breath puffed in tiny clouds. The door to room B was cracked open about an inch. A thin trail of red-black liquid oozing out across the polished tile floor. I stopped short. A soft, dry voice whispered from inside the room. "I'm not ready for viewing." I backed away slowly, trying not to blink. The voice was wrong. It came from no throat, from no lungs. It sounded like it came from behind the walls. I turned and ran. Back at the desk, I shut my eyes and recited Rule 2 over and over in my head. Do not clean the body. Do not enter the room. Do not answer. When I opened my eyes, the hallway was dark again, but the oozing trail had vanished. I checked the morgue logs. There was no body scheduled for room B. I sat frozen, note clutched in hand, until a faint scratching echoed from inside room B. 4 taps in rhythm against the glass, like fingers. Then, silence. I didn't sleep that night. At 1:00 a.m., I unfolded the paper again. Beneath Rule 2, a third had appeared, faint, as if revealed by the cold air itself. 3. If you hear the doorbell ring between 1 a.m. and 2 a.m., do not answer it. We are not expecting visitors. I slowly turned toward the heavy double doors at the front of the mortuary and waited. Ding dong. Part 3. The visitor who should not exist. The bell rang again. Ding dong. It echoed through the mortuary like a death knell, vibrating in my bones. My hands were slick with sweat. I gripped the edge of the reception desk, like it was the only thing keeping me tethered to reality. Rule 3 burned in my mind. 3. If you hear the doorbell ring between 1 a.m. and 2 a.m., do not answer it. We are not expecting visitors. I stared at the security monitor, showing the front entrance. The camera feed flickered, static lacing the screen, but I could see a silhouette. Someone was standing at the door. Their face was obscured by the angle, but something felt wrong. They stood too still. No shifting, no breathing, no movement at all. Just stand. I flinched. My heart thudded as the lights in the hallway behind me dimmed, one by one, as if responding to the sound. The temperature dropped again, and the faint scent of burned flowers filled the air, sweet, rotten, and acidic. The scent of old funeral wreaths left too long in the sun. Then I heard it. I left something inside. Let me in. I only want what's mine. The voice didn't come from the door. It came from the walls. I backed away from the monitor. The figure still hadn't moved. My phone buzzed in my pocket. Only one word in the notification. Don't. No sender. Just that single, chilling command. Then the screen on the monitor glitched again. For a split second, I saw what was really standing outside the glass. Its head was too wide, neck elongated like it had been stretched, eyes lidless and black. Its mouth was open, hanging like a broken jaw, and inside was only darkness, deeper than any night. And then it was gone. The screen cut to sea. I waited, unmoving, heart threatening to burst. By 2:01 a.m., the lights came back on. The cold air receded. Silence returned. I thought I had survived it. But then, beneath Rule 3, new ink bled across the paper in front of me. Still wet, still warm. 4. If a casket appears in the center of the embalming room, do not open it. It does not belong to the deceased. It belongs to what waits below. I turned slowly toward the embalming room, and I heard something heavy slide into place. A creaking lid. Something had arrived. Part 4. The coffin from below. The embalming room door was slightly ajar. A cold draft spilled through the gap, carrying the scent of old metal and something far worse. Damp earth, like a freshly disturbed grave. I hesitated. But Rule 4 already told me what I didn't want to know. 4. If a casket appears in the center of the embalming room, do not open it. It does not belong to the deceased. It belongs to what waits below. I took a deep breath, then pushed the door open slowly. The overhead light flickered to life. Just one, a single cone of light illuminating the center of the tiled floor. And there it was, the coffin. It hadn't been there before. I was certain. I had cleaned this room myself not 2 hours ago. It was old, far older than anything in the funeral home. The wood was gray and rotted. The metal clasps rusted. Strange, circular markings were burned into the lid, like some ancient seal. Worse yet, muddy handprints lined the base, as though something had crawled out of the ground. And I didn't move, didn't breathe, because I realized something else. The room was too quiet. Not just silent, but vacuumed of all sound. No hum from the fluorescent light. No ticking from the clock. Just stillness. My eyes dropped to the floor, and I froze. The coffin had a shadow, but I didn't. Panic surged through me. I stumbled back, but my foot hit something soft. I turned around. Another coffin, smaller. Another one had appeared. I spun back to the first, but the lid was now slightly ajar. No sound, no movement, just that thin black slit across the top, like the casket was watching me back. I didn't dare open it. Instead, I backed out of the room and shut the door. It clicked, but not by my hand. The light inside went dark instantly. I tried to steady my breathing, heart racing. I looked down at my rules list, still in my hand. And then, as if ink seeped through the paper from beneath, a new rule appeared before my eyes. 5. If you hear knocking from inside the walls, do not answer it, especially if it knows your name. Before I could process that, knock, 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 from inside the walls behind me. Then came the voice. Ethan, you forgot to close the casket. Part 5. Voices from the walls. Ethan, you forgot to close the casket. The voice was soft, familiar. It wasn't just saying my name. It was remembering it, savoring it, stretching it through the old bones of the funeral home like a rotten lullaby. I pressed my back against the cool hallway wall, staring at the door to the embalming room. Knock, Knock, knock. It came again from the wall behind me this time. And then the whispering. So many voices. Layered, fragmented, wrong. Some wept. Some giggled like children. Some chanted something I couldn't understand. I pulled out the rule sheet with trembling hands. The ink from Rule 5 was still wet, like it had been written by something breathing behind the paper. 5. If you hear knocking from inside the walls, do not answer it, especially if it knows your name. Easy enough, I thought. Don't answer. Just move. Just get away. But then, knock, knock, knock. This time, 3 knocks in perfect rhythm, and from 3 different directions at O, behind me, to my left, and beneath my feet. I bolted down the corridor, past the viewing rooms. The lighting flickered overhead, stuttering like an old film reel. The air grew thicker, like wading through fog underwater. As I passed room 3, a sudden creak made me halt. The door slowly opened by itself. Inside, the lights were off, but something was standing by the coffin inside, silhouetted by moonlight, leaking through the stained glass window. It was tall, too tall, and it was wearing my clothes. I turned and ran again, this time toward the reception hall. But just as I reached for the doorknob, "Ethan!" The voice came again, this time from directly above me. I looked up. The ceiling tile above my head shifted slightly. Something was crawling up there. The sound of brittle fingernails dragging across wood pulsed through the hall like dry leaves scraping across a tombstone. The door in front of me creaked open slowly. Light spilled out, and standing in the reception hall was Mrs. Granger, the funeral director. Only her face was blurry, her eyes too far apart. She smiled, but it was like her face had forgotten how smiles worked. "You're early for your own service, Ethan." Part 6. The mirror in the viewing room. I slammed the door shut behind me, heart punching my ribs like a prisoner desperate to escape. Mrs. Granger, whatever she had become, was still on the other side. Her blurry face lingered in my mind like static on an old TV. But here, in the viewing room, it was quiet. Too quiet. The kind of silence that listens back. The long red curtains rippled without wind. The rows of empty chairs faced a single casket, closed this time. But what truly caught my eye was the mirror on the far wall. It was full length, ornate, antique, its frame curled like thorned vines around blackened glass. But the strange thing, there was no reflection. Not of the casket, not of the room, not of me. I pulled out the rules. Rule 6 had burned itself into the page now, like it had been seared by heat rather than written in ink. Do not stand in front of the viewing room mirror. It doesn't reflect what you see. It reflects what you hide. Too late. I was already standing before it. And now, something was starting to form. Not a reflection, but a version of me. One with sunken eyes, mouth stitched shut with funeral thread, and hands black with formaldehyde rot. It reached toward me from the mirror. And then, it spoke. "You lied, Ethan. You said you'd never come back." I stepped backward, but the thing stepped forward, from inside the mirror, as if the glass was just water. I turned to flee, but the mirror Ethan was no longer just a reflection. He was behind me now. He moved like stop motion, every twitch jarring and out of sync. His stitched mouth began to unravel. black thread dropping to the floor like worms. The body remembers, even when you pretend it's buried. He lunged at me. I rolled under one of the folding chairs and crawled toward the curtain, yanking it open, only to reveal another mirror behind it. And in this one, I wasn't there at all. Just an open casket and a dark figure lowering its head inside. The air turned to ice. Every breath hurt. I screamed and hurled a chair at the mirror. It shattered into 1,000 shrieks. When I turned back, the stitched version of me was gone. But scrawled on the back of the broken mirror, written in something red and thick, was a new rule. 7. When the mirror shows you what you've buried, never ask it why. It remembers more than you do. Part 7. Funeral March. The walls were closing in. I could feel it. The thick, heavy silence of the viewing room now felt like it was trying to crush me from all sides. The broken mirror had shattered on the floor, its glass shards glittering like cursed stars. But all I could hear was my own breathing, sharp and frantic. I needed to get out, now. But there was something in the air, something thick and suffocating, like a storm cloud that had found its way into this cursed house of the dead. The funeral march played softly in the distance. It echoed through the building, a mournful, mechanical sound that didn't quite make sense. The melody was wrong, distorted and unearthly. It wasn't coming from any speakers. It was coming from below. I didn't think. I just moved. I stumbled toward the door, my hands trembling as I turned the handle. It didn't open. Panic bubbled in my chest. I tried again, harder this time, banging the door with my shoulder. My fist, but it wouldn't budge. That's when I heard it, a low, guttural whisper from behind me. Join us, Ethan. It's your time. I spun around. No one. Just the casket. Just the mirror shards. Then I saw it. A figure, barely a silhouette, appeared in the darkened corner. The figure was tall, unnaturally tall. It was dressed in a black suit, the kind of suit you would see at a funeral. But something was off. The man's head was bent at a sharp, unnatural angle. His eyes, two hollow sockets, staring into the void. The funeral march grew louder, now an agonizing, screeching wail. And then the figure smiled. It wasn't a smile of warmth or sympathy. No, this smile twisted. It was demonic, like a shark grinning in the dark. It stepped forward, its movement jerky, as though it wasn't entirely human. With each step, I could hear the echoes of 1,000 footsteps that weren't mine, thundering in my ears. Something was in this house, something that wanted me, something that had been waiting for. The funeral procession. That's what it was. I could hear the whispers of the dead, see the pale, sickly faces of mourners who had long been buried themselves. And then, as I backed away, the figure spoke again, its voice slithering like a cold wind. You can't escape, Ethan. The procession has begun. The ground trembled beneath me. I looked down to see dark, thick shadows creeping along the floor like liquid tar, reaching out to pull me into the abyss. I ran. I had to run. But the shadows followed. The doors were still sealed tight. There was only one way left to go. The casket. The final resting place. I had no choice but to open it. And as I did, the shadows swarmed me, pulling me toward the Part 8. the last resting place. I fell deep, but there was no impact, no crashing to the ground. It was as if I was falling forever. The sensation of weightlessness took over, and I could feel my body drifting through the void, being pulled in every direction by unseen forces. A cold wind whipped around me, stinging my skin like tiny needles, yet I couldn't move. Then the darkness swallowed me whole. When I opened my eyes, I wasn't sure where I was anymore. The space I found myself in was vast, yet suffocating. It was a place between places, a place that shouldn't exist. I stood in the center of a cavernous chamber, one whose walls were lined with ancient stone, covered in a layer of cold, damp moss. The ceiling arched so high, it disappeared into darkness, as though it had no end. I could hear the distant echo of soft footsteps, the faint sounds of something or someone moving in the shadows. It was all so silent, and yet the silence was deafening. And there was the faint, ever-present hum of the funeral march. It was there, echoing through the walls. But now, it had a new quality to it. It wasn't just music anymore. It was a living, breathing thing. Something alive. A sound that thrummed in the very marrow of my bones. I took a step forward. The floor beneath me groaned, as if acknowledging my presence. And then, I saw it. A procession of shadowy figures, moving in a line. Their forms were indistinct, barely human, like wraiths. Each of them dressed in funeral attire, their faces veiled in darkness. They walked with a deliberate, synchronized rhythm, as though they were part of some ancient ritual. But they didn't move toward me. They moved toward the center of the chamber, where a massive, ornate casket rested upon a raised platform. The coffin was old, its wood carved with intricate patterns, each one more disturbing than the last. It looked ancient, far older than anything I had seen before. And the closer I got to it, the stronger the feeling of dread grew. One of the figures stopped. Its head turned slowly toward me, revealing a face that was not a face at all, but a hollow mask of shadow, with glowing red eyes that pierced through the dark. A twisted, distorted voice slithered from its lips. "You've come to take your place, Ethan." I wanted to scream, to run, to do anything, but my legs wouldn't move. The air grew heavier. The room seemed to pulse with a life of its own, each beat like the thumping of an unseen heart. The shadows seemed to twist and writhe, coming alive with every sound, every heartbeat. And then, the ground began to crack beneath my feet. One by one, the figures knelt before the casket, their heads bowed low. The air was filled with a low chant in a language I couldn't understand, but somehow I could feel the power behind it. This wasn't just a ritual. This was a ceremony of finality, a ceremony of death. I tried to move again, but the shadows closed in around me. Then, the funeral march reached its climax. A deafening crash echoed through the chamber as the casket slowly, agonizingly slowly, began to open on its own. The lid creaked, its hinges groaning as if reluctant to reveal whatever lay within. But I had no choice. I had to look. Inside, nestled among a bed of black velvet, was a body, but not just any body. The corpse was unnaturally pale, its skin stretched too thin over the bones, its eyes wide open, staring straight into the void with an unblinking, lifeless gaze. I knew instantly it was myself. I was the one in the coffin, the figure from before, the one with the glowing red eyes, stepped forward and whispered, "This is your place now, Ethan. Welcome to your final rest." The moment the words left its mouth, the shadows around me tightened, closing in, suffocating me with their darkness. The figures continued their chant, their voices blending into a cacophony of death. And in that moment, as I was pulled into the coffin, into my own final fate, I understood. The rules were never meant to be broken. Part 9. The Final Toll. The darkness was suffocating. I couldn't breathe. Every part of me screamed for air, but it was as if the very life had been sucked from my lungs. My limbs, once able to move with ease, felt heavy, as if weighted down by unseen chains. I tried to scream, to fight against whatever force had a hold on me, but the words died in my throat. The shadows were swallowing me whole, pulling me into their cold embrace. I was in the coffin now. I could feel the soft velvet beneath me, crushing my body, pushing me down, trapping me. The figures surrounding me, still chanting their eerie, incomprehensible language, had disappeared into the darkness, leaving only the sound of the ritual echoing through the chamber. The whispers, no, the voices, were now inside my head. They weren't just chanting anymore. They were speaking to me in a language that I could understand, but that shouldn't have made any sense. "You broke the rules." I felt a coldness wash over me, chilling me to my very core. The words were not just spoken, they were felt, deep within my bones. "You broke the rules," the voices repeated, "and now you will pay the price." I tried to move my arms, to break free from the confines of the coffin, but it felt like they were bound by thick, invisible ropes. I could feel the weight of the earth pressing down on me, and I realized with a jolt, the casket was being lowered. Slowly, relentlessly. The lid of the coffin creaked as it slid down, sealing me inside. The air was growing thinner, the space growing smaller. The scent of decay was overwhelming, filling my nostrils, burning my lungs. I can still hear the chanting, louder now, as though the entire room was shaking with its force. The ground beneath me trembled, as if some ancient force was awakening, stretching from the very foundations of the earth itself. Then I felt it. Boom, a cold hand pressed against my chest, weighing me down. The touch was icy, like the fingers of death itself, cold as the grave. Suddenly, a flash of light, a blinding light, too bright to look at, yet I could not look away. The light began to split the darkness around me, forcing its way through the cracks, breaking the shadows apart. I heard the voices scream in terror, and then a thunderous boom rang out, as if the very walls of the burial chamber were cracking open. The ground below me gave way, and for a fleeting moment, I felt weightless, as if I were falling once more. But it wasn't a fall. It was a sinking into the void. I could feel myself descending, deeper and deeper, until the light vanished entirely. The final toll had been rung, and then I saw it. A door, a glowing door. The figures, the ones who had been chanting, stood before it. Their faces were still hidden in shadow, their voices now a roar in my ears. The light from the door seemed to pulse in time with their chant. One of the figures, the one with the red eyes, stepped forward, its shape solidifying from the shadows. It raised a hand, its bony fingers pointing directly at me. "This is it, Ethan," it hissed, its voice slithering like the sound of rotting wood. "The final rule, the last toll." I couldn't fight it anymore. The pull of the void was too strong. The door was now wide open, and I had no choice but to step through it. Part 10, The Final Judgment. The door opened, but not like a normal door. It ripped apart the very fabric of reality itself. There was no wood, no metal, just an infinite blackness that seemed to swallow everything around it. The moment I stepped closer, my entire body froze, like I was trapped in the event horizon of a collapsing star. I felt my heart beat in my throat, pounding against my ribs, each thump like a countdown. Tick, tock. The figures in the shadows were now silent. Even the chants had stopped. It was as though they were waiting, watching. I took one tentative step forward, and the ground beneath me shifted. The air thickened. Each breath I took was filled with an unbearable heaviness, as if the universe itself was exhaling in unison with me, holding its breath. The glowing light from the door began to pull me in, like some irresistible force. I couldn't resist it, couldn't fight it. "You will face your judgment," a voice whispered. It wasn't just any voice. It was the voice of the shadows, the voice of everything that had haunted me through this nightmare. It was a cacophony of every regret, every wrong, every mistake I had ever made. I tried to shout, to speak back, but my mouth was dry, my body refusing to obey. With each step forward, the air grew colder, the darkness deeper. The glowing door seemed to stretch out in front of me, its light turning from white to a sickly yellow. The air tasted of decay, of death, of something ancient, something terrible waiting for me beyond. I took one more step, and then the ground beneath me crumbled. I fell. I fell into nothingness, into an abyss where there was no up or down, no beginning or end. The door vanished. The light, the last trace of safety, disappeared, and I was lost, alone. I was falling for what felt like eternity. Time and space blurred together, stretched and twisted. The air around me felt like ice, and yet, somehow, my skin burned. I was caught in the grip of something impossible, something that shouldn't exist. My body was weightless, and yet I felt every inch of it. The aching limbs, the tightness in my chest, the coldness in my soul. Suddenly, a whisper, a soft, almost inaudible whisper. I tried to focus, tried to listen, but the sound was lost in the void. But I heard it. It was my name, Ethan. A chill crawled up my spine. The whispering continued, growing louder and clearer. "You will face your sins, Ethan." I wanted to scream, but I couldn't. The voices were everywhere now, overlapping, blending together. They were coming from all directions, surrounding me, suffocating me. My mind began to unravel, spinning faster and faster as the whispers grew louder until I couldn't tell where my thoughts ended and the voice. Then a flash of light, a blinding flash, so bright, so pure, it almost burned my eyes. The light was familiar, but I couldn't place it. It seemed to be calling to me, pulling me from the darkness, urging me to follow. I closed my eyes for a moment, and when I opened them, I was standing again, on solid ground. I was back in the House of Shadows, the very place where it all started. But everything was different. The figures were still there, but now they stood at a distance, watching me in silence. Their eyes glowed, but they no longer seemed threatening. It was as if they were waiting for something, waiting for me to choose. And then I understood. The judgment wasn't for me alone. It was for everyone who had entered this place, everyone who had been part of this twisted ritual. And I had to make the choice, the final rule. The choice was mine to make. Live or die. The figure with the red eyes stepped forward, its gaze never leaving mine. Psst, thank you for staying till the end. If your heart's still beating, maybe it's time to like, share, and subscribe. We'll be waiting here every week with a new nightmare just for you. Remember, in the silence, something always listens back.